But out of God's love and incredible mercy for me, and really his love for all of us, all of you, all the people who are watching, I went through this journey, and it was a journey that was amazing. And as I look back, as I was writing the book, looking back at my life, looking back at that moments where I was in deep pain. And why do we have pain? Because we carry so many lies about ourselves. I tell people sometimes, you know, I get invited a lot to speak about God's love. And sometimes I feel like we do so much injustice even talking about God's love. Why? Because God's love is so beyond our comprehension as human beings. Because you're a mother, you love your children, one of your sons is here. And as a mother, would you be willing to ever sacrifice Matthew or Mateo's son for anybody? Would you? Or your neighbor's son?
You know, I'd go before my children. I mean, and you're right. You can't explain the love you have for your children.
Exactly, because you'd say, no, as much as I love the neighbor's son or my nephew or whatever, I'm not going to sacrifice my son's life for another child, no matter how much you care for that child. And so when we talk about God's love, God went beyond that. God the Father truly, you know, I believe obviously in the Christian God, which is the triune God. It's one God that who manifests himself in three different persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But they're in essence one, manifested in three persons.
And that's what we believe as Catholics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when you really think about it, when God the Father sacrificed his son, it's really still one God. So he's sacrificing himself. Absolutely. And so when he sent Jesus, and Jesus knew that we were going to turn our backs against him. He knew we were still going to sin. He knew that many of us were not going to appreciate it, that no matter what, we're still going to go back to our sinful nature. He still did it. And he did it even to the last breath, asking for forgiveness for all of us. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I mean, he said that on the cross. When 11 of his disciples or apostles were not even there. It was just John and his mother Mary on the cross, and one of them betrayed him. And so you think of us when we feel betrayed, when we feel sad, when we feel lonely, when we feel abandoned. How can he not understand that? He went before us and set the example. And he went with such love, even though I'm a sinner, and maybe I love others, but I'm still sinful. I know I'm capable of sinning, and I have sinned. And with God's grace, I try to sin less every day, but that's only with God's grace. But he was sinless. He took on our humanity to save us, because it took the error of Adam and Eve. It took God himself coming down and saying, I will lay my life before you. And so that is the type of love that I didn't know about, that nobody taught me about, that when I was living in Europe, and that's what my book is about initially, I was studying in France for my junior year abroad. It was an
Before you go to that, can we go back to, because you're talking about our relationship with God.
Right.
And I was telling you, I was just with a lot of students, about 300 of them, but I was fortunate to be judging some speeches of about 14, and the majority were all young women. But one of the things that the judges and I commented afterwards, and that's why I want you to go back before you move forward, is that they all talked about their father and their drive and their life, and they all brought their father into the speech. My father, you know, and I appreciate my father, and I love my father. How, can you explain, is there a metaphor here? Can you explain to me? I mean, I've just had this epiphany that maybe this is because we're searching for that love, or we're searching for that. I mean, they look at their fathers and we associate them with, you said we associate it with God. Can you explain that a little bit more? Because that's very interesting that you said that. And here we had all these young women.
More detail.
Yeah, here we had these young women. Or is there a connection at all? Or am I reading something differently into this? Because why would it be that all these young girls, they didn't bring their mother into it? Every single one in their speech
mentioned the father.
Mentioned their father, their dad.
I'll tell you one thing, Sonia. I've been in this inner healing ministry now for 8 years, where I pray one-on-one with people, and it's confidential setting, right?
Okay.
So I've heard stories. I can write a book just about the stories I've heard without mentioning names, obviously, but if God calls me to do that, I will one day. But one thing I'm seeing over and over and over, especially from Hispanic culture, from the Latino culture, okay, that there's a starvation for fatherly love. If you start talking to generations, and many of them, where the father came here to send money to the families back in Mexico, I hear the story almost 9 out of 10. I hear the story 9 times out of 10. I hear the same story, where children grew up without fathers. The father maybe was sending money, or they saw him once a year on Christmas, or that week he came home, while the mother was raising the children. I've heard this starvation for the father from young people, old people. I mean, it doesn't. It's the father figure is so important in the house.